So since I wrote my story poem where I kind of mentioned about how I transitioned into veganism and what I saw and everything else, I've had quite a few questions about it, asking me essentially whether it was genuine or whether it was just something that I'd said for effect. But no, sadly, it's 100% true, the whole story from start to finish, including my hypocrisy. And I think that's what potentially the theme of this video will be about. I want to elaborate a little bit. I don't really want to go too much into that story, if you don't mind, because I'm not lying when I say that it still haunts me every day, 8 years on. I can just confirm that it was true. I went to that place to check on the breeding of spaniel puppies, and I had no idea what was going on next door. We spent nearly 3 days, just shy of 3 days, watching, and what I enjoyed whilst I was there, enjoyed is probably not the right word, because in comparison what I enjoyed was absolutely nothing. What I had to witness, shall I say, I don't know how the best way to describe it without sort of trying to paint myself as the victim, when in reality I never was. I just had my eyes opened. It is the reason that I'm now vegan. Like, it genuinely did happen as I told. I mean, I wish it hadn't, but it did. And in turn it made me realise just how much of an absolutely enormous hypocrite that I was. Probably more so in fact than the average person. And purely because I was going out and doing things, I was active, I considered myself an activist, I was sabbing hunts. That was the main reason that we were even at that farm to begin with. If there was illegal puppy breeding going on, that's what we were there to do, to document and maybe even remove the dogs. So yeah, I was a bigger hypocrite than the average person in that regard, because I'd already made the connection that eating the flesh, the meat of an animal was wrong, and that's why I'd stopped doing it and become vegetarian. But I hadn't made that connection with eggs and dairy. Just to further on from that point, I totally can see why lots of people don't want to see graphic footage or images on their news feeds or anything like that, and they sort of like reject it and it upsets them. However, from my own personal experience, if you've got the choice to watch something like Earth Things or Dominion, or have a conversation with someone that's happy to have the conversation with you, do it. Don't find out like I did, because like I said, 8 years on, and that still bothers me every single day, and I'm trying as hard as I can, and I'll never sort of unburden myself of that guilt, and I don't want that for anyone else either. So if you've got an opportunity to learn by not witnessing it in real life, I'd definitely recommend that option. And just quickly, whilst I'm on that subject, it's one of the main reasons that I do get very personally offended when people go, I worked on a farm once, that's not what happens. Because it's like, well, you're basically not only calling me a liar, you're also defending animal abuse. But imagine that example in any other sense. Let's say that you had a really terrible holiday, the hotel was tragic, the food was rubbish, everything, and you wrote your review, and then someone piped back up and said, well, I stayed in a hotel once somewhere else and it was fine, so therefore you must be a liar, therefore your experience didn't happen because I had a different one somewhere else. The ignorance and the closed-mindedness is almost absurd. I just don't think things like that help anyone on either side. There's a difference between having a debate or an engaging conversation or raising a topic that you want to discuss and just basically abuse, which is more or less what that is, essentially. It's just ignorant abuse. Anyway, so the last little point that I wanted to cover, just to go full circle on the hypocrisy thing, I know people use it time and time again, but it is such a good example to use, is the Yulin Festival. Now, I know that every year when I used to be on Facebook and I used to be in dog rescue, and I had a huge amount of people that were on my friends list that were still eating animals, but yet absolutely disgusted and wanted to do everything they possibly could to end the Yulin Festival for all the right reasons. I'm not knocking them. However, all of those reasons that they find the Yulin Festival so disgusting and despicable and can't bear the idea of those animals being tortured and suffering in the way they are, is how we feel every single day. Put your mind back into those couple of months a year where you're posting your videos and sharing your petitions and trying to spread awareness of what happens to those dogs. That's what we do on a daily basis, but not just for dogs. We do it for the animals that you're also eating, for the animals that you don't seem to care about for the most part. And I know that people don't like this and they class it as having it rammed down their throat, but it isn't. It's pointing out the truth. I'm sorry if you don't like it. If you were in school and you kept writing words spelt incorrectly, you could expect to be pulled up on them every single time. The teacher's not just going to get to a point where they go, you know what, yeah, if you want to spell it wrong, who cares? Spell it wrong. They're going to keep pulling you up because you're wrong, and they want you to be better, they want you to correct it, they want you to learn. It's no different. We are going to keep pointing out this hypocrisy because we need you to learn. The animals need you to learn. They need you to realise that if you can make this connection for dogs, or cats or whatever it is that your preferred species or preferred pet or the animal that you choose to love the most, if you can feel that level of emotion and passion and anger when you know that something bad is happening to them, why can't you do that to every species? Why can't you extend that out? And it doesn't even matter if you don't like dogs and cats and the Yulin Festival doesn't affect you in any way, shape or form. I can almost guarantee whatever animal it is that you like, someone somewhere is eating it. Or if they're not, they're hurting it. And if you can't accept that there's a bigger picture here, like you must know, and therefore you just can't be bothered to change your life. It really is that simple. If you can make the connection, and this is especially for the vegetarians out there, I see so often, most days, that someone will put a comment saying, you know, I love animals, I've been vegetarian for 30 years. Which completely ignores all that absolute devastation caused by the egg and dairy industry. So really, it is a case of what are you waiting for? What more needs to happen? How many more have to suffer before you recognise it? You clearly can acknowledge it with certain species and certain animals that you do like and you do seem to relate to for whatever reason. So just extend that, just take that feeling and that consciousness and just extend it to all beings, or at least if you're not willing to make any personal sacrifices yourself, just have a think. Is it a good idea for me to leave this ignorant comment? Does it serve any purpose for me? Does it serve any purpose for the person that I'm leaving it on? And is it something that I would want my kids or my family to see? Am I actually proud to support animal abuse? Am I actually proud and happy to support the destruction of not only billions and billions of other beings, but also the world? And I guess if the answer is honestly yes to that, then I pity you. It would be the only time where I would class myself as superior or having a moral high ground, because if that is genuinely your thoughts and your feelings, you don't deserve mine or anyone else's time, to be honest. You deserve the same respect that you give out, and that's pretty much none by the sound of it.